Mr. Speaker, the President of Ukraine.
Members of Congress, I have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you His Excellency Petro Poroshenko, President of Ukraine.
Mr. Speaker, Majority Leader, members of the House, members of the Senate, ladies and gentlemen, it's impossible to imagine what I'm feeling right now. How symbolic is the unity of the United States Congress and solidarity with Ukraine. This is exactly what Ukraine now needs the most: unity and solidarity, not only with the United States Congress, not only with the United States, but with the whole world. Let me thank you for your warmth and hospitality. Addressing both houses of the Congress is one of the highest political privileges. Standing here, I am grateful and fully aware that this honor goes not to me, but to the people of Ukraine, those brave men and women who are today on the forefront of the global fight for democracy. Of Ukrainian people now watching this speech and this session of the Congress and seeing and absolutely sure about our solidarity and our joint and common strength. And please allow me to speak on their behalf. I will focus on the one thing that is at the core of Ukraine's existence today: freedom. There are moments in history when the freedom is more than just a political concept. At those moments, freedom become an ultimate choice which defines who you are as a person or as a nation. Ukraine has lived this moment over the last 10 months and became a stand for the most heroic story of the last decade, a synonym for sacrifice, dedication, an unbreakable will to live free. The people of Ukraine stood up to the corrupt regime of Yanukovych. They stood their ground during this dramatic winter. More of you were together with us during the last winter. And I thank you for this very important for us gesture of solidarity. The defenders of freedom were willing to sacrifice their life for the sake of a better future. What is even more amazing, they and we won. Armed with only sticks and shield, they attacked by the special police and chased them away. The victory gained on the Independence Square in Kiev, known now to the whole world as the very international word of the Maidan, was a victory against police brutality, harassment by the state-controlled media, violence, intimidation. There is nothing more impressive than seeing hundreds of thousands of peaceful people forcing out a violent dictator and changing the course of the history. Second time in our history. Day after day, week after week, month after month, thousands upon thousands streamed into the street of Kiev simply because their dignity didn't allow them to remain passive and silent while their liberty were at stake. The standoff on the Maidan lasted long 3 months. It culminated on the February the 20th and 21st when over 100 protesters in one day were shot by snipers. We call them Heavenly 100. We revere them as a true national hero. And we applaud their heroism. Dear ladies and gentlemen, in February, when the world saw that no one could take away Ukraine's freedom, an external aggressor decided to take away part of Ukrainian territory. The annexation of Crimea became one of the most cynical acts of treachery in the modern history. I just want to attract your attention. Ukraine, which gave up the third largest nuclear potential in exchange for the security assurance, was stabbed in the back by one of the countries who gave her those assurances. Allow me to remind you, 20 years ago, exactly 20 years, the Budapest Memorandum, Russia, along with the United States, United Kingdom, France, and China, vowed to provide for the inviolability of Ukraine's state border and territorial sovereignty. In reality, what we got from Russia was annexation and the war that has brought Ukraine to the brink of its survival. The Soviet Union had collapsed too quickly, creating the illusion that this chapter in history was closed and that this story had come to the end. But unfortunately, in mind of the people, it has not ended. The imperialistic mindset is still there. Nostalgia for the Soviet Union and dismissal for the settlement that ended Cold War had been cultivating revisionist instincts. In year 2008, Russian troops occupied Abkhazia and South Ossetia. They now have invaded Ukraine. The right to protect ethnic Russians and even Russian speakers can and already has become a reason to fan the flames of war. Besides Ukraine, Russian speakers reside now in Moldova, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Baltic states, Poland, even in Germany there's a very big majority. Bulgaria, Moldova, Georgia, Ukraine. Who is the next? Many things, including the effectiveness of the global non-proliferation system, will be put under severe test and judged depending on the response of America, of the whole world, to this very simple question. Even NATO allies are at risk. And as if to underline this point, 2 days after President Obama's visit to Estonia, the day NATO summit ended, the Estonian intelligence officer was abducted and accused of espionage. The security assurance that were extended to Ukraine and then have failed to work, providing no agreements, treaties, containments can secure world order. So what can bring the peace and what can maintain it? Common values, cooperation, interdependence, leadership and responsibility. This is the things who can defend the global security. So I urge you not to let Ukraine stand alone in the face of this aggression. Thank you. And this is very important that the whole world will see this gesture of solidarity. Ukraine are not alone. We are together. We are united. And we win. Because our fighting is fighting for freedom, is fighting for democracy. And I have absolutely no doubt that our victory would be very close. I'm absolutely sure that the United States made a commitment that it would stand behind Ukraine's territorial integrity, and we hope that it will live up to that promise. Democracy. Because it is very simple. Democracies must support each other. They must show solidarity in the face of aggression and adversity. Otherwise, they will be eliminated one by one. The aggression against Ukraine has become one of the worst setbacks for the cause of democracy in the world in the years. With just one move, the world has being thrown back in time to the reality of the territorial claims, zone of influence, criminal aggression, and annexation. Can you imagine? Within 2 weeks, Crimea was invaded and annexed. Why? Because Ukraine simply were not prepared to this aggression. We were not prepared to face this enemy. That was exactly at the time of the Revolution of Dignity. And they used this opportunity without any doubt. Post-war international system of checks and balances was effectively ruined. The world has plunged into the worst security crisis since USSR standoff 1962. Today we are witnessing another attempt at dividing the world. Ukraine stands in the center of this attempt. The outcome of today's war will determine whether we will be forced to accept the reality of the dark turn and beat Europe as a part of the new world order. This Ukrainian army, imagine, these young boys, under-equipped and often underappreciated by the world, are the only thing that now stands between reality of the peaceful coexistence and the nightmare of the full relapse into the previous century, into the new Cold War. Ukrainian soldiers, Ukrainian people, Ukrainian boys and girls now on the front for the freedom and democracy. They need your support. Thank you. The war that these young men are fighting today is not only Ukrainian war. Everybody should understand that. It is Europe's, and it is Americans' war too. It is the war for the free world. For the free world. Today, aggression against Ukraine is a threat to the global security everywhere. Hybrid, proxy war, terrorism, national radical and extremist movement, the erosion of the national and international agreement, the blurring and even erasing of the national identities. All these threats now challenge Europe. If they are not stopped now, they will cross European border and spread absolutely throughout the globe. To prevent this, thousands of Ukrainian soldiers are in the line of fire exactly right now, when we have a so-called ceasefire. From the date we will start the ceasefire, Ukraine lost 17 lives of the Ukrainian soldiers. 67 are wounded. This is a ceasefire, and this is the price Ukraine now paid for the peace. Speaking in the United States Congress from this high beacon of freedom, I want to thank them for their sacrifice. Every single soldier. Thank you for the United States Congress, and I urge the world to recognize and endorse their fight. They need more political support throughout the world. They need more military equipment, both lethal and non-lethal. Urgently need. Please understand me correctly. Blankets, night vision goggles are also important, but one cannot win the war with the blankets. Even more, we cannot keep the peace with the blanket, and this is most important of our values, of our aim, not to win the war, but keep the peace. For keeping the peace, we should be strong enough. And there is no any doubts that we will be strong because of you, because our solidarity. and because of the combat, very strong spirit of Ukrainian soldiers. I thank all of those in America who realize and appreciate the historic importance of this fight. Just like Israel, Ukraine has the right to defend her territory, and it will do so with all the courage of her heart and dedication of her soul. I urge America to help us and to rise and to be equal to its natural and manifest role. I urge America to lead the way. Ukraine has a special bond with the United States. Today, Ukraine is taking shape as American natural and consequential partner in the region. This partnership is not circumstantial. It has not come because we find ourselves in the same boat. It came about because in the moment of the existential crisis, Ukraine's choice was the same as America. Very simple. Freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. In a time of Europe's skepticism and Russia's open, unprovoked hostility, Ukrainian citizens have been ready to give their lives to see Ukraine democratic and free. Circumstantial votes can change. Nature of the people cannot. It is the nature of the Ukrainian people to tolerate no dictators and to strive for their freedom no matter what. Given today's situation, Ukrainian democracy will have to rely on their own strong army. In the upcoming years, building a strong military will be another existential test for Ukrainian democracy. I see it in my utmost duty to rectify the damage done to the Ukrainian military and to give Ukraine a strong, modern army that we can be proud of. With this in mind, I strongly encourage the United States to give Ukraine a special security and defense status which reflect the highest level of interaction with non-NATO ally. And I also ask that the United States be forceful and stand by its principle with respect of further sanction against the aggressor. Economic sanctions are important for many reasons. They help to distinguish between good and evil. They help us to defend and stand the moral high ground and not to sink into the indifference, disgust, and pragmatism. I understand that the wars of the last decade have been taking a heavily toll on the economy of the West. And I understand, believe me, that Americans, an American citizen, an American taxpayer want a peace, not war. So do Ukrainian citizens and taxpayers. However, there are moments in history those importance cannot be measured solely only by the percentage of the GDP growth. Ukraine war is not only the war of the last decade that is purely about the values. Ukraine war is the war again for the freedom, democracy, European values, and the best evidence of that is the number of members of Ukrainian parliament which ratified our association agreement with the European Union. Our nation decided to be free and democratic. Another nation decided to punish Ukraine for this. The world simply cannot allow this kind of behavior. Values come first. This is the truth the world and the West would remind Ukraine over the last years. Now it is Ukraine's turn to remind the West this truth. Allow me also to say this. There is no way, at no price, and under no condition that we will ever put with the Crimean occupation. Ending the occupation and annulling the annexation is not only an integral precondition to a full normalization of the relation between Ukraine and Russia. It is also the integral precondition for the Crimea's own prosperity and modernization. Until this precondition is fulfilled, I urge America and the world to stand united in sending the signal to the aggressors of today and to the future that the policy and practice of annexation will never be tolerated. And clearly, I'm not talking about the military solution of the Crimean problem. This will be a dilemma for many years, a choice between two ways of life, two political, economic, and social systems. But I have no doubt that in the long run, the system that offers the greater freedom will prevail. It always does. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the last half year has been time of ultimate challenge for millions of Ukrainians. It was a time for heroism and sacrifice. Too many, it became for their ultimate sacrifice. Let me share with you 3 human stories that illustrate my point. On the March the 3rd, when the occupation of Crimea just started, there was one man in Crimean city of Simferopol who did the unthinkable. When millions felt paralyzed and stunned at what was unfolding before their eyes, Rishat Ametov, 39-year-old father of 3, decided not to be silent. This brave son of the Crimean Tatar people went on one-man protest in the front of the occupied city hall. He did nothing more than hold a sheet of paper that said, "No to occupation." A group of unknown people arrested him, transported him away in the plain sight of the dozens of witnesses in front of the TV cameras. 2 weeks later, he was found, tortured, and executed, mafia style. Just the thought of this man's final torment minutes sent chills down my spine. I asked myself, what made this hero do what he did? And I can find no other answer than he did it for the freedom. So his children would not face slavery like that neo-Stalinism dictatorship. And I am convinced that in a years from now, when Crimea occupation will belong to the past, the Crimean people will think about what he did and salute his braveness, just as I do now. And I assure you that Ukraine will always stand together with the Crimean Tatar people. Those language, rights, culture are being trampled upon right now as they were many years ago under the Soviet rule. I urge America and the world not to be silent about these crimes. It is Ukrainians and Crimean Tatars who are being oppressed in Crimea right now. And it is a time for all the people of goodwill to rephrase the John Kennedy's words from over 50 years ago. I am a Crimean Tatar, and there is nothing that would make me give up my freedom. And let me also commemorate another Ukrainian hero, Volodymyr Rybak, 42 years old, father of 2, and member of the municipal parliament of East Ukrainian city of Gorlovka. On the April 15, he confronted with the separatists and Russian special operation officers over the separatist flag that they were trying to hoist atop the local administration building. Exactly just like Rishat Akhmetov, he was abducted and tortured. His last hours must have been unthinkable. His body was badly mutilated. Today, I stand here in awe of this tragedy and of the courage and sacrifice of this man, and the courage and sacrifice of the millions of Ukrainians. From the bottom of my heart, I deeply believe that will be a time, and I'm sure very soon, when Gorlivka Central Square will be named after Volodymyr, and when school children will bring flowers to his monument. Dear ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake, Europe's and the world's choice right now is not the choice between unipolar or multipolar order. Neither is a choice between different kinds of civilization. It's a choice very simple, between the civilization and barbarism. And while standing at this juncture before the great trial, the democratic world cannot shrink or hesitate. We don't want to see all the democratic accomplishment to the last decades to be erased and have been for nothing. The free world must stand its ground. With America's help, it will. Yes, we live in the world that is mutually reliant and interconnected. In this world, the aggression on one democratic nation is aggression against all of us. We fully understand that. If anyone had doubts about this, if anyone was hoping to sit it out while Russians continue killing each other, this ended on July 18th when Russian missile launched by the Russian mercenary shot down civilian Boeing 777 of the Malaysian flight MH17. 298 innocent, peaceful people, many of whom were flying on their vacation in the south, met their ultimate demise on the steppes of Ukraine. Their cold-blooded killing, just like the barbarian treatment on their remains afterward, show that whoever floods Europe with uncontrolled weapons put millions of lives at risk for years, for decades to come. This was an undisputable, brutal act of terror. Unfortunately, it was this tragedy that gave a wake-up call to many in the world about the situation in Ukraine. Long after war's end, the fear and hate linger on. How many more deaths will be caused by the handguns handed out with absolutely no control or accountability in those regions? How many innocent children will step on landmines so massively utilized by the separatists? How many lives will be ruined and soul poisoned by the propaganda machine? The act of pumping the region full of uncontrolled arms represents the policy of the state-funded terrorism, and it needs to stop now. The cynical downing of the Malaysian Boeing relevated one most important thing. We are now at the forefront of the fight against the terrorism. And we need to join our efforts to effectively respond to this challenge. With this said, people throughout the world are asking the same question. Are we on the eve of the new Cold War? Is the possibility of the new, terrible, unimaginable European war there? Is what until recently seemed unthinkable now becoming a reality? Sadly, today, the answer to all of these questions is yes. However, we cannot and must not accept this as an inevitability. As recently as in 2008, the President of Russia ran his election campaign under the slogan, "Freedom is better than non-freedom." And it was in Russia in the year 2008. And I am sure that despite the Crimean annexation and ongoing aggression, millions of Russians still remember that slogan and take it seriously. Please, let's remind them. Let's show them that the freedom is not the luxury, as some try to convince them, but necessity and the precondition for the true success of the nation. And I am convinced that the people of Ukraine and the people of Russia have enough goodwill to give a peace one last chance and prevail against the spirit of hate between our countries. That's why my presidency begins with a peace plan and one-sided ceasefire which will last long 10 days. Again, paying the very high price of the killing Ukrainian soldiers, hitting Ukrainian planes, and hundreds wounded. We keep this ceasefire long 10 days. Unfortunately, this was not accepted by Russian separatists. That's why we are holding our fire now. That's why two armies stand before each other without massively shedding each other blood. And if the thing work out right, they will not have to. I am in daily contact with the leaders of the world, including the leader of Russia. The dialogue is not easy, believe me. Over these last months, too much goodwill was destroyed. Too much hate was generated, naturally and artificially. Too many people have died. Based on that, I feel that there is growing mutual recognition that the enough is enough, and the bloodshed must stop. The pandemic of hate must be localized and contained. As a president, looking in the eyes of the mothers and wives of the dead soldiers and civilians, believe me, this is my hardest duty. No one can take it lightly. Today, it's my burden and the burden of the President Putin. As he lit a candle in Moscow church to remember those who perished in this war last week, I did the same in Kiev. And from the bottom of the heart, I deeply, profoundly wish that the church candles would be the only thing who burned in Ukraine from now on. Over the last months, Ukrainians have shown that they have a courage to stand up for the most powerful enemy. We will never obey or bend to the aggressor. We are ready to fight, but we are people of peace. And we extend the hand of peace to Russia and to the Russian-inspired separatists. I am ready to do my utmost to avoid the further escalation and casualties, even at this point when the war has already started feeding on itself. Sooner or later, I am absolutely sure, peace will return to the Ukrainian homes. And despite the insanity of this war, I am convinced that the peace can be achieved sooner rather than later. And I am ready to offer the separatists more rights than any part of Ukraine had ever had in the history of nation. And I am ready to discuss anything except one thing: Ukrainian independence, Ukrainian territorial integrity, Ukrainian sovereignty, Ukraine dismemberment. And I am confident if this war is about the rights and not about the geopolitical ambition, the solution must, and I am sure will be found. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1991, independence came to Ukraine at a very low cost and peacefully. Yet the more real this independence became, the higher grew its cost. Today the cost is as high as it gets. While fighting this war, we learned the value of independence and to recognize the true friends. And at no point we ever forget why we need independence. We needed to have a country worthy of the dreams of our anxious. We need to state would give its citizens a life of dignity, fairness, and equal opportunity. To reach this goal, we will have to root out the sins that drain Ukraine's potential for such a long time and make for the 2 decades of independence and times for the lost opportunities. We are painfully aware of these sins, largely inherited from the era of Soviet Union decay, corruption, bureaucracy, and the self-preserving cynicism of political elites. There is a saying that each people deserves the government it gets. Ukraine II revolution within the single decade showed that Ukraine as a people is better, much better than Ukraine as a government. They show that Ukraine needs and deserves deep and profound modernization in absolutely all spheres, of the kind that brought economic success to Poland. Given the current situation in and around Ukraine, the implementation of the comprehensive reform is not a matter of Ukraine succeeding, but Ukraine surviving. Deeply aware of that, I gave my voters the pledge. I will stick on it. With the Ukraine-EU Association Agreement signed and ratified simultaneously in the Ukrainian and European Parliament, we have a clear path of reform before us. Never in the history, the European Union was there a document that was paid so dearly, at such incredible human cost and sacrifice. And this sacrifice, the memory of the hundreds dead and wounded, will be one more reason, an incentive to hold this unique chance to make Ukraine live up to its potential. Ukraine needs modern governance and non-corrupt public administration. Ukraine needs to delegate more power to the local communities. Ukraine needs to rely more on its strong, vibrant, and dynamic civil society. Ukraine is building a new model of managing its states and economic affairs where merit and hard work are duly rewarded. Ukraine needs know-how, technology, and new startup to become better integrated to the global economy. And for all of that, we need you, America's help. In particular, I asked the Congress to create a special fund to support investment of American companies in Ukraine and to help us with the reform of our economy and our justice system. And I assure you that all aid received from the West will be utilized by non-corrupt institutions and that the new generation of officials will make sure that the funds are distributed effectively. Ladies and gentlemen, we call our revolution a revolution of dignity. Human dignity was the driving force that looked people to the street. And this revolution must result in the education of dignity, economy of dignity, society of dignity. Human dignity, which makes Ukraine heart beat and Ukraine's mind look toward a new and better version of itself. Human dignity is one thing we have to oppose to the barbarism of those attacking us. It is one thing that we can set against the sea of lies in which highly sophisticated and well-funded machine of Russian propaganda is trying to drown the truth about Ukrainian democracy. In the coming years, too many things will depend on Ukrainian success. Believe me, too many things. And this success will be determined by Ukraine's new leadership, by its new political generation, and by newly mobilized society of Ukraine. Ukraine truly makes a difference. By supporting Ukraine, you support new future of Europe and the entire free world. By supporting Ukraine, you support a nation that has chosen freedom in the most cynical of the times. In Ukraine, you don't build a democracy. It already exists. You just defend it. And exactly this, what makes Ukraine unique, its struggle deeply and profoundly different from any other conflicts on the world scene. This is what makes Ukraine the ultimate test for adherence to the idea of the freedom. Live free or die was one of the mottos of the American Revolutionary War. Live free or die was the spirit of the revolutionary on the Maidan during the dramatic winter month of 2014, with the significant presence of the member of United States Congress. And we thank you for that. Live free or die are words of Ukrainian soldiers standing on line of freedom on this war. Live free must be the answer with which Ukraine comes out of this war. Live free must be the message Ukraine and America send to the world while standing together in this time of enormous challenge. Thank you. І слава Україні!